For Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sashnee Moodley. Researcher and analyst Professor Raymond Suttner joins me to discuss the abuse of law enforcement agencies. Hi, Professor.
Hi.
What is at stake in the investigation into Finance Minister Pravin Gordhan?
You know, there are, in some ways, it goes to the root of the problems of governance at the moment, in that before the whole question of SARS came under the spotlight and the alleged SARS rogue unit last year, there were reports that the acting commissioner, Ivan Pillay, who has since more or less been forced out of SARS, that he had communicated to the president that he was liable for tax for fringe benefits related to Nkandla. This had nothing to do with the Public Protector's report, but because he had benefited, or the value of his house had increased through state action, he would be liable. Secondly, there was an issue about ANC T-shirts from Taiwan that SARS wouldn't release until they paid VAT or something like that, or customs. So there were, he was touching on the SARS have always been, since Pravin Gordhan became head of SARS around 2004, 5, or whatever it was, or earlier, it's been much tighter, much more was collected in revenue than ever before. And obviously this affected people who were shady. And this claim that there's a rogue unit was published in the Sunday Times, who subsequently recanted the story, said they didn't have evidence, and doesn't appear that there was anything illegal that was done, or if there was anything illegal that was irregular, it was very minor, and doesn't seem that Gordhan is implicated at all. Now, it's hard to keep track of what's happening, because today in the newspapers, one of the newspapers says that the NPA has been talking to 2 SARS people who've been suspended to get them to become state witnesses against Gordhan. Now, in exchange for immunity, but immunity about what? What is the crime that they give evidence? Also, it's irregular that NPA should be directly speaking to potential witnesses before a case has come to them from the investigating police officers. So what is at stake, we have to ask. I think what is at stake is that when Gordhan left there, and ultimately when Moyane became head of SARS, he dismantled key structures within SARS which related to big earners and big companies, and companies in many cases that were operating in a grey area between legality and illegality, and some of these, it is alleged, are people who are associates with the president. So not only did he get rid of people who had been pursuing their work by all accounts with integrity, but he dismantled structures in SARS. Now, when Gordhan became minister, he obviously had the impression that after the debacle with Nene, that he was in a strong position. So one of the things he did is he said to Moyane, "You must stop this restructuring till we've discussed it." And Moyane simply defied him, because far from Zuma accepting the return of Gordhan and the removal of Des van Rooyen, he's been fighting a sort of rearguard battle, undermining Gordhan, first of all with SARS, But secondly, with SAA, because one of the things that Gordhan said is that no more money will be given to bail out SAA until they have a new board, until they do this, until they do that. And first of all, the president has been blocking the removal or the changing of the board, particularly making it clear that he wants the existing chair to remain, a person with whom he has close relations. Secondly, he has said he wants SAA to be closer to him, and the implication seems to be that instead of SAA reporting to the Treasury, it would now report to the presidency, so that the oversight that a lot of people see the Treasury as performing is under attack. And I think of all the state institutions throughout the period since 1994, the one that has created an image of professionalism, a lack of partisanship, just doing their job, to be in the Treasury. And that works well for the citizens in terms of our monies being looked after well and taxes being collected. But it doesn't work well when you want to benefit friends and things like that. So those are the sort of things that are at stake. But the question really now has been escalated with the potential charging of the Minister of Finance. The head of the Hawks didn't say, head of the NPA didn't say that he refused to confirm or deny whether Gordhan was a suspect. Now, if he were not a suspect, it would have been easy to say, no, he's not. So that it seems to me that they do intend to charge him. Whether they'll be able to do it is another matter. I mean, whether it'll stand up in court is very doubtful.
And how do you see future developments?
You know, the future of these developments relate also to a number of other state institutions that are not functioning at the moment. NPA, IPID, there's been problems in Denel, but I read today that they suspended the CEO and they've actually brought him back in and they want the payout back from him, and it's all very, very messy and all sorts of irregularities that are being performed by a number of state institutions who are there to safeguard institutions and the public from abuse. So how I think we can answer the question of how this will pan out relates to the future of Zuma. And as long as Zuma remains president, it seems likely that he's going to try and steer the ship of state in a way that benefits himself personally. And business has indicated their a level of interest in this matter, and I've always believed that business has an interest in stability, in clean government, in lack of corruption, all of these things. Now they've taken action against Oak Bay as banks, and they were involved, by all reports, they were involved in the return of Gordhan. Now I would hope that business could use what power it has to try to insist on clean government, and that may mean the removal of Zuma. And this, I think, it will be met with more sympathy with some people within the ANC. I'm not sure about that, because the way the ANC relates to this is that many of them believe that if they remove Zuma before the local government elections, they will suffer. And there can always be some new reason why not to remove him. But I think they may suffer more by keeping him there. And the problem with us as citizens is that we don't have power to do this. We can write columns, we can express our exasperation, but we have to ask who has got power. Business has got power, citizens do have power, but they're not organized to exercise it. And I think it's very important that various civic bodies, strata in society like faith-based organizations, all such bodies have got an interest in clean government. And I think it's important that they have their voice heard on these matters.
Thank you, Professor. That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about the abuse of law enforcement agencies.